Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Shinvatam Swakata Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtanaha, Vidyantasto Bhadrani, Vidunoti Sukritsatam. Shri Krishna, the personality of God, who is the Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamasloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, All that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. We have a reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 5, entitled The Cause of All Causes. That's what the chapter been called for this time. For some reason. Because I'm confused because I've been reading in text in Canto 3, the same topic actually. So, okay, the cause of all causes. Brain glitch. So, text 33. 34. What? I thought when I saw it said 33. Okay, 33 then.
Well, it's written 34 there.
Huh?
On Sunday it was given.
Sunday it was given. Nobody tells me. This is an unusual situation. Nobody tells me. It wasn't here. Well, I'm going to use the same thing because it's the same topic. I'm going to say the same thing. So, who gave class Sunday?
I made sure that one of the traveling brahmachari.
Oh, I should have figured that out. I should have figured that out. Okay. So, wait. Let's see. Okay. Text 34. Varsha, Puga, Sahasrante, Varsha, Puga, Sahasrante, Tad, Andam, Udake, Shayam, Tadandam, Udake, Shayam, Kala, Karma, Swabhava, Sto, Kala, Karma, Swabhava, Sto, Jivo, Jivam, Ajivayat, Jivo, Jivam, Ajivayat, Varsha, Puga, Sahasrante, Tarandam, Udake, Shayam, Kala, Karma, Swabhava, Sto, Jivo, Jivam, Ajivayat, Varsha, Puga, Sahasrante, Tarandam, Udake, Shayam, Kala, Karma, Swabhava, Sto, Jivo, Jivam, Ajivayat. Please chant.
Varshapuga Sahasrante Talandam Udakeshayam Kalakarma Svabhavasto Jivo Jivam Ajivayat. Varshapuga Sahasrante Talandam Udakeshayam Kalakarma Svabhavasto Jivo Jivam Ajivayat. Varshapuga Sahasrante Tadandam Udakeshayam Kalakarma Svabhavasto Jivo Jivam Ajivayat.
Varshapuga Sahasrante. Tarandam Udakeshayam. Kalakarma Svabhavasto. Jivam Ajivayat.
Varshapuga Sahasrante Tadadam Udakeshayam Kala Karma Swabhavasto Jivo Jivam Ajivayat
Varshapuga Sahasrante Tadandam Mudakeshayam Kalakarma Svabhavasto Jivo Jivam Ajivaya
Word meanings. Varshapurga, many years. Sahasra ante, of thousands of years. Tat, that. Andam, the universal globe. Udake, in the causal water. Shayam, being drowned. Kala, eternal time. Karma, action. Swabhavasta, according to the modes of nature. Jiva, the Lord of the living beings. Ajivam, non-animated. Ajivayat, caused to be animated. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Thus, all the universes remain thousands of eons within the water, the causal ocean, and the Lord of living beings entering in each of them caused them to be fully animated. Excuse me. Thus, all the universes remain. Thousands of eons within the water, the causal ocean, and the Lord of living beings, entering in each of them, cause them to be fully animated. Okay, purport. The Lord is described here as the Jiva because He is the leader of all other Jivas, living entities. In the Vedas, He is described as the Nitya, the leader of all other Nityas. Nitya, of course, means eternal. The Lord's relation with living entities is like that of the Father with the sons. The sons and the Father are qualitatively equal, but the Father is never the Son, nor is the Son ever the Father who begets. So, as described above, the Lord as Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, or Hiranyagarbha Supersoul, enters into each and every universe and causes it to be animated by begetting the living entities within the womb of the material nature, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 14.3, which I'll read right now because it's so similar. The total material substance called Brahman is the source of birth, and it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the births of all living beings, O son of Bharata. Okay, returning to the purport. After each annihilation of the material creation, all the living entities are merged within the body of the Lord, and after creation they are again impregnated within the material energy. In material existence, therefore, the material energy is seemingly the mother of the living entities, and the Lord is the Father. When, however, the animation takes place, the living entities revive their own natural activities under the spell of time and energy, and thus the varieties of living beings are manifested. The Lord, therefore, is ultimately the cause of all animation in the material world. So, Oma Jnana Tirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Undilitamina Tasma Shri Gurve Namaha. Was born in the darkness of ignorance. The spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So, one of the first things I notice about this purport is talking about the Lord as the Father. Contrast this with the fact that in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, and of course in the Nectar of Devotion, and always we hear that there's 5 rasas, and in not one of them is one the child of the Father. the 5 rasas, Krishna may be the son, and the living entity may be the father. Not Nanda, it can't be Nanda, but it could be a fatherly person in the village. Or it could be a friend, it could be a lover, it could be a servant. But not one is the help in the eternal spiritual world. No one is the helpless child. This is very interesting. Although everybody's dependent on Krishna, but that's not a rasa. But in the material world, Krishna says, I'm the seed-giving father. You got your hand up?
Yeah, but Krishna has sons.
Well, in Dwarka.
Yeah.
Not in the highest place, not by Kunta. It does have sons in Dwarka, yeah. Yeah, thanks. But in the spiritual way, in Goloka Vrindavan, where the highest rasas occur, all the rasas are manifested in Goloka Vrindavan. They're not manifested much yet. So much, well, they are wides, but they're not. It's not fully manifested like in Goloka Vrindavan. And in Goloka Vrindavan, there's nobody is the son. And actually, the sons, they're just particular type of servant, really. They're participating in the pastimes. Nobody is like, I am the child. Anyways, not in the list of rasas. Nobody is. But in the material world, Krishna is the father. I am the seed-giving father of all living entities, because he impregnates. He impregnates the eternally existing living entities into the material nature. And that's how material life is. So we have to understand our dependence on him. We have to obey him. We have to try to serve him like the little child, not very good at things, tries to serve the father. This is our position in the material world. So we are the children of the Father. But it's not in the spiritual world, in Goloka Vrindavan anyways. So it's not in the list of rasas. So that's an interesting point to know about. So this is talking about continuing the idea of continuing the creation. This is Lord Brahma speaking, and Lord Brahma is outlining for Narada Muni, and his purpose here is to lay out who's doing what, and the what do you call it? The hierarchy of creation. Because Narada was wondering, are you the creator? Are you the top creator, or is there somebody higher? So for him and for us, he's laying out the order of creation. So in yesterday's verse, he's explained how first it expands to Mahavishnu, and Mahavishnu is laying the causal ocean, and then from him he breathes out the universes, and he enters in this Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, and then within each universe he expands as the super soul and impregnates the living entities into material nature. And he also, in this section, there's a place where it's outlined which elements are created first and which ones are created from that and from that and from that. So everything is placed in its order in this verse. But this chapter, in this canto, it's, however, not quite going into the personal dynamics. And I've also been reading in third canto, in which Maitreya Muni is explaining the same topic to Vidura. And he's going into more detail, and he's going into interesting dynamics. So I was going to talk about that yesterday, but it fits today too, because this is also about the Lord enters into the universes and causes them to be fully animated. So this still pertains. So, especially, but I'm more notes than you know, all these things we're going to talk about. So really pulled an interesting thing together. So when all these things became assembled. Just to backtrack a little bit, Rama says, first of all, he says, I create after the Lord's creation. And there was discussion yesterday or the day before, there was discussion of first and second creation. The first creation is the creation of the elements by Mahavishnu, and then Lord Brahma creates into particular forms. However, in Maitreya's explanation to Vidura, the demigods got stumped. They couldn't proceed with their second level of creation. So, all the demigods, they have charge of different things, and they couldn't do their service. So I'm going to read about that. So, I have to use my phone because I have Control 3. So I have to use my phone. 3538. 3538. So he's again describing, this is even, I don't know what it is. This numbers don't make sense. Sorry, folks. Okay, let's try this. Thereafter, the Mahatattva differentiated itself into many different forms as the reservoir of the would-be entities. The Mahatattva is chiefly in the mode of ignorance, and it generates the false ego. It is a plenary expansion of the personality of Godhead. Pretty interesting. This is his energy. With full consciousness of creative principles and time for fructification. This in itself is really curious because the Brahmajyoti is, we've just learned previously in this chapter, learned the Brahmajyoti is totally dependent on Krishna. It's not conscious and it's impersonal. And this looks like the Mahatattva, which is created from the Brahmajyoti, but the Mahatattva is when Krishna starts getting involved in it. So then this Mahatattva becomes like a plenary expansion. That's very interesting.
So Mahatattva is a complete material.
It's a complete material energy, which is unconscious in its own right. However, it says here, it is a plenary expansion of the personality of Godhead with full consciousness of creative principles and time for fructification.
Maybe that's why when the Lakshmi Narayan Prabhu was telling Mahatattva is the energy into which the matter is impregnated.
Well, matter is not impregnated into. Matter is not impregnated. Souls are impregnated. Matter is formed out of it. Krishna enters it. But that's not impregnation. Impregnation, it says many times that the souls are impregnated into matter, material energy. But material energy in the Mahatattva is not formed yet. It doesn't have its different qualities yet. So somehow it's got to be expanded. It's got to be expanded into elements.
So this soul,
but not by impregnation.
Soul impregnation. Okay, soul impregnation is the secondary creation or the primary creation? Like
the souls are impregnated
by Brahma or Vishnu.
They can't act yet. Wherever they are, at what point they enter, they can't act yet till Brahma makes bodies for them.
Okay.
And the demigods have to be able to activate their particular services. And after that, everything becomes animated. So I don't know, honestly, exactly which stage, probably because it probably tells, I haven't read that recently, but it probably tells which stage. But I don't know which stage the impregnation with souls occurs. But then the subtle forms of the body, the senses, the parts of the body, have to be created by Vishnu. He creates them because he wants to them. He enters the material energy and he wants to experience senses. So he already has spiritual senses, but he enters it and wants to experience material senses. So they come into being, but they are not assembled yet for the living entities. So then the demigods have a problem, which, let's see, 38. Following what I just read is describing the order of the creation of the elements. Okay, then 38. The controlling deities of all the above-mentioned physical elements are empowered expansions of Lord Vishnu. They are embodied by eternal time under the external energy, and they are his parts and parcels. Because they were entrusted with different functions of universal duties and were unable to perform them, they offered fascinating prayers to the Lord as follows. Now what follows is prayers, a series of prayers, long series of prayers, glorifying and praying to the shelter, praying to the lotus feet of the Lord and seeking shelter. And you would think, I sort of wondered, well, that's very common prayer. It's not fascinating, it's common. I mean, it's all good, it's all fascinating in its a way, but it's not particularly fascinating. So why is he calling it fascinating prayers? I was sort of curious. But I think I understand now. Because they could not do their functions until a certain thing happened, which is, let's see, hang on. Let's see. 48. Let's go to 48. After the prayers to the Lotus feet, then the demigods say this: O original person, we are therefore but yours only. Although we are your creatures, we are born one after another under the influence of the three modes of nature, and for this reason we are separated in action. Therefore, after the creation, we could not act concertedly for your transcendental pleasure. Number one, they wanted to act for Krishna's transcendental pleasure. The demigods are solid devotees of Krishna. They may be mixed devotees in that they still have desire to control material nature. Because we somewhat controllers. They still have some desire to do something here. But they are solid devotees of the Lord. And they were separated under the modes, and they didn't know how to serve the Lord's pleasure. So they wanted to serve the Lord's pleasure, and they were separated under the modes. So now what? And let's see. And so we're going to 3, 6, 10, next chapter, verse 10. The Supreme Lord is the super soul of all the demigods, who are demigods entrusted with the task of constructing the cosmic manifestation. Being thus prayed to by the demigods, he thought to himself, and thus manifested the gigantic form for their understanding. Now we know where the Virat Rupa, the universal form, comes into play. It's because the Lord has to enter into the material elements and become them, in a sense, by becoming the universal form, so that the demigods who are trusted to work with these elements can be serving the Lord. They have some direction, they have some focus. They don't want to do it independently. They don't want to, and they really can't, without the Lord being the center. We're dependent on the Lord for our service, and we don't want to do anything else but the Lord's service. So like the demigods, totally dependent. They couldn't do it as separated persons under the modes. Couldn't do their service to the Lord. When the Lord enters the modes, enters the elements, then they can serve him and they can do their duty. So then, yeah, that's fascinating. It's true. It's fascinating. I became fascinated. So let's see. He thus manifested a gigantic form for their understanding. So 3, 6, 2, and 3. Let me go back to 2 and 3. I had it written down. I must release them. Let's see. 2 says, the Supreme Powerful then simultaneously entered into the 23 elements with the goddess Kali, his external energy, who alone amalgamates all the different elements. And 3, thus when the personality of God had entered into the elements by his energy, all the living entities were enlivened into different activities, just as one is engaged in his work after awakening from sleep. I studied it seemed like they were telling this before they told how Vishnu was heard their prayers and then entered. But I think this is kind of like a summary, and then he goes into more detail and explains it. So first the summary came, and then he went into a little more detail, and then he goes and describes the Virat Rupa, the Mahatattva, how he proceeded from there. The gigantic universal form of the Supreme Lord is the first incarnation and plenary portion of the Super Soul. He is the self of an unlimited number of living entities, and in him rests the aggregate creation which thus flourishes. So we are 100% dependent on him for anything that we do, any service, anything that we do. The demigods do everything. It's all within the Lord. So then, let's see. Then 3, 6, 11. Maitreya said, you may now hear from me how the Supreme Lord separated himself into the diverse forms of the demigods after the manifestation of the gigantic universal form. So then he began, so the demigods weren't even activated, so he expanded himself into the demigods, which are, the demigod positions are parts of him. And there's individual souls in those positions too. But he entered them so that they could be activated and do their service. Very, very fascinating, very deep subject matter here. And the Bhagavad Gita tells us in simple terms. So I'm going to just go look the book here. Bhagavad Gita 7, 4, 5, 6, and 7, which we are accustomed to this familiar reading. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. All together, these 8 constitute my separated material energies. Very simply put and explained to us, the Bhagavatam goes into the detail of what one comes from what and so on. But basically, these are the separated material energies. Besides these almighty armed Arjuna, there is another superior energy of mind which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. 6. All created beings have their source in these two natures. Of all it is material, and all it is spiritual in this world, know for certain that I am both the origin and the dissolution. 7. O conqueror of wealth, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. Interesting thing about this analogy is that when you string pearls on a thread, you cannot see the thread, but the pearls are in order. There's no thread, pearls are all over the floor, chaos. If there's a thread in there that you can't see, everything's in order. Well, what happens when we look around this world? Everything is in order. So everything rests upon the Lord. His pearls are strung on a thread. We can't see how he's holding it all together, but everything rests in him, and he's holding everything together. So that's pretty interesting right there. And so text 8 through 12 is the universal form again. This universal form keeps popping up and popping up. So it's very interesting how it keeps popping up, and it's sort of, in the beginning we don't understand why we have to keep reading about the Lord in the form of like trees and rivers or sun and moon or something like that. Why can't we just hear about him as Krishna? We're trying to develop love for Krishna. Why do we want to know about Krishna in the form of a tree or a river or a moon or something? But it keeps popping up. So I'm going to talk about that too. But first I'll read this little section in chapter 7 about the universal form. O Sanakoti, I am the taste of water, the light of the sun and the moon, the syllable Om in the Vedic mantras. I am the sound of ether and ability in man. I am the original fragrance of the earth, and I am the heat and fire. I am the life of all that lives, and I am the penance of all ascetics. O Sanaprita, know that I am the original seed of all existences, the intelligence of the intelligent, and the prowess of all powerful men. I am the strength of the strong, devoid of passion and desire. I am sex life, which is not contrary to religious principles, O Lord of the Bhartas, Arjuna. Know that all states of being, be they of goodness, passion, or ignorance, are manifested by my energy. I am in one sense everything, but I am independent. I am not under the modes of material nature, for they, on the contrary, are within me. So we have, again and again, we have this universal form. We have it in the beginning of Canto 2, the first step in God realization. It's all about the universal form. We have it again, it's going to come up again. It sort of came up again in this chapter a little bit, and it's going to come up again in next chapter. And as Vidura asks questions of Maitreya, and Maitreya explains stuff with the universal form. It comes up in chapter 15 of the Bhagavad Gita again. And there's hints of it here and there. Oh, chapter 10 also, the opulences. It keeps popping up, the universal form. And why? And why is it called the first step in God realization? The first thing that happens is we hear the mantra, Maha Mantra, and get a picture of Radha and Krishna, right? That's the first thing that happens. Then we get the Bhagavad Gita and read about that. Read about Krishna and Arjuna and the chariot. So why is that the first step of God realization? Well, we have lots of realizations. We find out prasadam feels different from other kind of food, and it's delicious. That's a realization. We want more of it. We find out the holy name makes you feel different. We want more of it. So we realize it's transcendental. We realize that the deities are beautiful and feel good to serve the deities. We realize that Prabhupada's books are fascinating to read and give us deeper understanding. We have lots of realizations about everything Prabhupada gave us. We have realization that Krishna is beautiful, but do we really realize Krishna? We don't see him at every moment. That I know, I mean, most of us don't see him at every moment, like Prabhupada did. Like a pure devotee sees Krishna every moment in everything, and sees him face to face. We don't have that kind of realization. We keep getting started with the universal form. And we're supposed to not like funny for years. Say first step in God realization. Well, I'm like 35 years in the movement or something like that, and I'm now realizing it's really important to understand the universal form. But that's the first step in God realization, actually realizing God. You start to understand He's in everything, He's everywhere, He's right around us. He's within our bodies, He's within the nature next to us, and the person next to us, and the air and everything. He's personally within us, and personally present as well as impersonally present. You start to realize that, then we can build on that. In chapter 7, Krishna starts, I just read it, Krishna and Bhagavad Gita, Krishna starts Arjuna off with, I'm the taste of water. And he's already sitting there as Krishna with Arjuna. He could manifest the universal form right off the bat, and he could show the four-arm form, and then he could show his two-arm form, and Arjuna would be, all set to go. Why did we start with the universal form? Because that is the first step. We really have to read and reread and ponder it. So one thing that's been helping me is the fact that I've been reading the third canto on my phone, which means I don't mark the place. And I forget where I was. I was trying to read my way through it and, proceed to read the whole Bhagavatam again. And somehow in the third canto, I keep rereading stuff because I forget where I'm at. The benefit of rereading is it makes you ponder. Then you say, yeah, there's that thing again. Or what does it actually mean? You study the purport, you study the subject around it, and try to understand what that means. So this pondering and rereading kind of helps you start to get more realization. And then you say, that's why, now I see it now. You see stuff like that. Now I understand that whole picture. So we have to do this rereading and pondering, and we have to do this questioning. What does that mean? How can that be? In what way is it being? In what way, how can it be? So we try to ponder like that. That's not mental speculation, that's philosophical speculation, which Prabhupada recommended. Because we don't just take it as a series of sentences that we memorize, and then we have knowledge. We take it as something to ponder and enter deeply. And when we're doing this pondering, it's super slow in our heart, like in Bhagavad Gita 8, 10 and 11, no, 10 and 11, the four nutshell verses, the second two of them are about how the Lord gives us knowledge. So we're pondering deep in our heart, and He's in our heart, and He's shining the lamp of knowledge to give us the knowledge to come to Him. So the knowledge to come to Him is realization. He becomes real to us, and we become more and more attached to Him. So this pondering is, I just can't stress the importance enough. Reread and ponder. Even if you can't read a whole lot of the book, read some section over and over again for a while. And it starts to open up. Even something that started off dry. Reread over and over. I'm trying to understand this dry thing. Read over and over again. Why is it in the Bhagavatam? So read it over and over again until you understand the purpose of it being in the Bhagavatam. So, and then ponder the meaning of it within your heart. And put it together with other things that you read, like what we know about the Bhagavad Gita. It's really important to do this as part of our spiritual advancement. So I think I'll stop now. Any comments, questions, additions, corrections? Yeah.
I don't have a good memory, but what comes to my mind when you're explaining about the Supreme Lord, it was necessary for Him to do the thing before the demigods could actually know what they were supposed to do. What came to my mind was in that canto where it was saying about the churning of the, I think it's called Mandaka mountain, where the demigods and demons were trying to turn the mountain. But they couldn't do it without a balance, without karma. He was like underneath, so there was a balance, and then there was the Supreme Lord on top. He was in so many different features for us, the demons and the demigods.
And He was also just among the demigods helping to pull. So He was a friend of the demigods, and He was on top, and He was under,
Yeah, that's the Supreme Lord.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you very much. All glories to Srimad Bhagavatam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you.
Thank you.